apps. So, what do you think an app symposium inside a SIGGRAPH community? How do you think that the computer graphics community and the apps development community now are going hand in hand?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I was asking that myself as well when I came here, because in a way I didn't really know what to expect, and we were organizing the panel discussion on how do users find my apps, and apparently the room was pretty full, so participants didn't leave. So I think that we were in the interest of the participants. So I think it does make sense. The topic actually really is also a topic for computer graphics people. So we had a lot of discussion of how you release an app and how you would make a popular app. And I think apps are just the medium for a lot of things now to distribute information and also for computer graphics. So I think it makes sense to integrate it, and it's an interesting forum.
Yeah, I mean, apps and mobiles right now are more of lifestyle products rather than telephonic products right now. And as the days grow, the apps are now controlling the everyday life of common man, and it has revolutionized the way that that people used to view mobile services as. What kind of products does ETH Zurich deliver to the audience, and which category of
Right.
app uses do you
Right.
cater to?
Right. Yeah, so ETH Zurich is a university, so we do research, but successful research we also try to spin out as companies. And our core topic actually is to provide apps for end consumers and for daily practices and daily routines. So one of our focuses is retail, so to support users in their shopping process. So to rate products, to get more information about products, to link experience of different consumers to each other, and also to improve the payment process and the interaction between retailer and consumer. So that's one focus we have. An example of a spin-off is the company Appaware, which actually is collecting all the data from different users concerning their app installation behavior. So it's a client you install on your phone, and then it collects which other apps you are installing, removing, updating. And by collecting all this information from different users, we can do research on the general app market behavior.
Yes.
And that's what we presented today in the panel, that the app market on Google Play actually is not a long tail market. It's not the niches, but it's actually still the blockbusters, so the most popular apps that actually drive most of the revenue in the store, in contrast to Amazon, which is really living on the long tail. And this is very important for app developers to understand, because
Where they place the
where to
product.
place. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, with a predominant market which is driven by indies and indie developers,
Right.
there is a balance of small indie development companies going big, even single students sitting in their hostels going big,
That's right.
and there are companies who spend thousands and thousands of dollars in research and
Yeah.
and teams
Yeah.
and in hardware, software, and development,
Yeah.
and then they create a product. So when someone starts to create a business plan for creating apps or anything like that, you have both the models in place. So in your research, what do you think is a more successful model? Is the indie mode of making apps a more mature way of going towards it, or no, it has to be the proper software development cycle based model to create an app?
So from a really very generic view, it is what I said before, that it's the Google Play market is a hit market, so that actually calls more for the blockbusters like Angry Birds, Facebook, and all the apps we actually know. These are the ones which really generate the largest parts of the revenue. For the independent developers, I mean, we have to look more specifically, but from the general picture is that this doesn't really play a big role. Of course, you can still have very specific apps. That what we found, there is some apps, maybe in the overall market, up to 50 apps, not very many, that have a very high price. So there are apps that are in the several $100 range. and they get downloaded maybe 1,000 times and generate a very big revenue, but they are very specific niche apps. But that happens only for very specific apps, for like navigation or for tools which are part like in the medical domain, that you have an Android device which is attached to a medical device. So that would happen. But for the independent developers, I think it's a hard time surviving of apps. What works better if independent developers actually subcontract and help shaping one of these blockbuster apps.
Right, and create a chain of working, like a supply chain kind of a thing.
So it's actually more advisable for an independent developer to work on the marketing budget of a big company which wants to have an app just as an additional source of marketing, than really relying on the actual adoption and really the income of the app itself, but rather being like a third party that actually is just providing the app for somebody else.
Good you mentioned that, because there are two different areas that app companies are going into. There is a services division and there's an IP division as well. And so there are companies which rely on the marketing budgets of companies and create apps as service to there. Whereas then there are products like you have, which are their own intellectual property, which you develop and do. So what market size do you think both of this cater to in the different markets, whether it is an iOS market or an Android market?
That's really a good question. So I mean, based on our data, we didn't really research that I could base my judgment on. In fact, it's rather my feeling. But my feeling is that the marketing budget is probably taking over now the IP apps. So there are maybe some very specific, some very useful apps which are very high in revenue, but it's probably more like the apps like Facebook and Google and stuff which is just a new window for a new search. It's just an add-on, an add-on. Yeah.
But don't you think that down the year with marketing companies, instead of an ad banner, they create an app nowadays?
That's true.
That it is kind of cluttering the market. What do you feel as some?
It is. So what we found out in our research is that the average user installs up to 40 apps. So that's something we have to keep in mind. That means there's a limited capacity for users to install apps anyway. So and the question is, which are the apps the users actually has? And that also means that over time, this cluttering actually cannot have a strong effect anymore, because the users have their apps already, and it has to be a real good one. So you do not want to install yet another advertisement of some company. So I think there is a limit as far you can go, and the more apps you have, the more you actually have to provide on quality on service.
So based on research, what kind of apps do globally people use the maximum? Is it something for utilities, for improving their daily lifestyle like time management, etc., or is it more something specific to stocks, to business? Which are the, if you rate 1 to 3, which would be the kind of apps?
So first of all, the interesting thing we found in our data is that globally there doesn't seem to be too much difference. So everywhere you have the same type of apps, just locally you have different players. So you have another search engine in Switzerland than you might have here, but still it's a search engine app you have on there. So it's really, you have like the local transport app, that's what people have. You have navigation app. Then people have some games they like. Probably some productivity, but that already goes then more specifically into the user group. But overall, it's like everybody is pretty much the same, and a lot of social networking apps also.
Right. I mean, apps that can club all the social networks together into a single body, like Bring or Fringe and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Great. So, what drives the R&D department to come up with apps that would be more readily accepted by the consumer? How do you do the research on that?
Yeah, so that's also a good question. So first of all, at university, it is our goal to do research. So that means we're actually using the App Store as a new tool to investigate research questions. So we actually see the app market as an alternative to invite 10 or 20 people in the lab and to do some studies and figure out what they're doing, to actually package the research in an app, deploy it, and hopefully have several thousand users. And by that we can like remotely analyze the data. That's our initial driver. However, if an app is successful, like the Appware example, then we also take the liberty to spin it off as a company and do it there. But we really clearly distinguish between research and business. Because an app is a living system, you really have to continuously update it, and pretty soon you leave the trades of research, and you cannot really justify the university. Why would you compete with all these school kids out there and all these independent developers and running on government budget to basically occupy this market?
Right, great. So where do you think that Asia stands globally when it comes to mobile apps generation, distribution, and development? I know there are many companies, and we're mid-Jaden now, and they are doing stuff really. But as a research company, I'm sure you must have also done a survey. Where do you see the Asian companies stand globally? When it comes to
again, my perspective is more from Switzerland. So I'm not really an expert here in Asia. I'm traveling here several times, and I meet people and I talk to people. So it's based on that. So what I feel is that Asian people probably like more to game. So gaming has a higher priority, and people are also willing to pay for it. So what we actually see is that in-app payments, like buying additional weapons, buying additional features in games, that's a business model which can be very strong in Asia and not so strong in Europe or in the US. So that's a major difference, and this is a great opportunity to exploit here. In terms of which companies are big here, I think it's probably the gaming industry, which also can have success then outside Asia. And as I said before, we didn't really recognize much differences in the apps users have on their phones.
Right. So as a revenue model wise, do you think globally it's the freemium model with a monetary transaction at a micro level that is more popular nowadays with the apps? Because apps have now grown to become the 2.0 version of the apps now. For the first generation, now we're moving into the second generation of app makers, app creators. Do you think that the freemium model, where you download the app for free and you pay for maybe after 6 months, or for microtransaction based payment, that is the way to the future? Or you see that the premium model, where you pay and download a $1 app, is the more better off model?
Again, I think generally the freemium model or even in-app purchase actually is the more successful model, because what we clearly see in our data, that especially on the Google Play market, the majority of the users is only downloading free apps. So having any price, it doesn't matter whether it's $1 or $5 or $10. If there's a price, you have just hundreds of less users than you would have for a free app. So that means you have to find for ways how to convert these free users into paying users. And having like a light version and a paid version, it's still a process. You have to go back to the market and have to look for this paid app and install it. So I think having this in-app payment, where you have a game where you can play the first level for free, but to go to the second level, then you actually have to pay for it. That's actually the more successful model, because it has a less barrier, and it also allows you to stay in the app. So you have a great experience and you want to continue that. Or what also works is that you have a routine that makes it easier. So you have like a bulk function, and you have to unlock this. So I think this is more successful. And for premium apps, there might be special cases where you can justify the cost up front. But I think that's not the
very
general
niche,
model.
very niche area. Yes, great. So one last question: what do you think are the challenges that mobile apps creators and distributors are facing now, and what would they be facing with the current economic scenario changing day by day?
So the main challenge we see today is, how does your app get seen by the users? So how do you get attention of the users? So previously, like 2 years ago, it was a very good strategy to continuously update, because then you would appear in the last in section, the latest apps that came in. But Google removed that now, so that means it's really difficult of how to get seen. And there's different strategies you can follow. Of course, you invite all your friends to use your app, you ask for good ratings, and you really have to market it as any other product. So you try to contact the professional blogs, and they mention your app hopefully, and by quality you actually get the attention. But it's really hard just to put it onto the market as it used to be before. You really have to professionally promote and market that app.
Thank you so much, Florian, for your time, and I think we had a lovely discussion. You have a great show.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.